You're holding a piece of raw meat. It is roughly 1 million years ago, somewhere in what will eventually be called South Africa. The meat is cold, tough, and stringy in a way that requires significant jaw force just to tear a piece loose. You have been chewing for 4 minutes. Your jaw aches. You have consumed approximately 80 calories. There is no stove, no pan, no recipe. There is, however, a grass fire burning approximately 30 meters away, started by lightning, spreading slowly across the dry savanna. And the smell coming from the direction of that fire is something your brain has never processed before. Something is cooking. You do not have a word for cooking. You do not have a concept for cooking. But whatever is happening over there smells different from anything you have ever encountered. And different in a world where everything unfamiliar is potentially lethal means your feet should probably be moving away from it rather than toward it. And yet, so here's the question that should sit with you for a moment. Every animal on Earth is drawn to fire by curiosity and repelled by it through instinct. Every animal except one eventually learned to walk away. What made one species, your species, walk toward the flames instead? And what happened to the human body, the human brain, and human civilization itself when that single decision got made and then repeated until it became habit? The answer is not simply that ancient humans got hungry and got clever. The answer is considerably stranger. Once you understand what cooking actually did to the human body at the biological level, you will realize that the person reading this sentence would not exist, could not exist, if one ancient ancestor had not leaned toward a burning carcass and taken a bite. Let's start with something that should make you feel genuinely strange about the face you see in the mirror. The modern human skull is anatomically bizarre compared to every other primate alive. Our jaws are small. Our teeth are weak relative to body size. Our gut is short, significantly shorter than the gut of a chimpanzee of comparable body mass. Our brains are enormous, roughly 3 times the size of a chimpanzee brain, despite similar overall body weight. These features do not fit together in a way that makes sense for a raw food animal. A chimpanzee eating raw food all day needs massive jaw muscles, large molars for grinding, and a long digestive tract for extracting nutrients from fibrous plant material. We have none of those things. We are anatomically an animal built for processed food. In 2009, Richard Wrangham at Harvard University published Catching Fire: How Cooking Made Us Human, a synthesis of decades of research establishing what he called the cooking hypothesis. Wrangham's argument was precise and uncomfortable. The transition to cooked food did not follow the development of the modern human body. It caused it. Our small jaws, weak teeth, short guts, and enormous brains are not adaptations that happened before cooking became possible. They are the biological consequences of a population that had been eating cooked food long enough for natural selection to reshape their anatomy around it. Think about that. We are not humans who learned to cook. We are a species that cooking created. The biological hardware running your thoughts right now, your oversized brain, your undersized digestive system, your weak jaw, was built by fire. That is not a metaphor. It is anatomy. Honestly, the campfire did more for human intelligence than any school system ever invented. Here is something that should probably make you feel a little uncomfortable about every raw food diet you have ever seen advertised online. Raw food contains calories. Cooked food contains more of them. Not because cooking adds anything, but because cooking breaks down the cellular walls that lock nutrients away from your digestive system. A raw sweet potato yields approximately 69 calories per 100 grams to your digestive tract. The same sweet potato, cooked, yields approximately 90 calories per 100 grams. That is a 30% increase in extracted energy from identical food just from applying heat. Meat is even more dramatic. Raw meat requires enormous digestive effort and still leaves significant protein unextracted. Cooked meat is pre-broken down at the molecular level. The proteins have already denatured. Your digestive system spends less energy processing it and extracts more from what it processes. In 2011, Rachel Carmody at Harvard University published a study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences testing exactly this effect on mice and pythons, 2 species that could be fed controlled quantities of raw versus cooked food. The finding was unambiguous. Animals fed cooked food gained significantly more body mass from identical caloric quantities than animals fed the same food raw. The difference was not trivial. It was large enough to reshape evolutionary pressures over generations. This is the thing most people never hear. The invention of cooking did not just make food taste better. It fundamentally changed how much energy a human body could extract from its environment. And that energy surplus is what paid for the most expensive organ in the animal kingdom. The human brain consumes approximately 20% of your body's resting caloric intake, despite representing only 2% of your body weight. It is extraordinarily expensive to run. Raw food cannot support a brain this size in a body this small. The math simply does not work. Cooking made the caloric surplus available that evolution then redirected toward neural tissue. And over hundreds of thousands of years, that agridirection produced the brain you are using right now to understand why it exists. Did you know? Homo erectus, the direct ancestor of modern humans, shows a dramatic reduction in molar tooth size and jaw muscle attachment points in the fossil record beginning approximately 1.9 million years ago. This is precisely the anatomical change you would predict if a population had shifted from raw to cooked food and natural selection had begun reducing the jaw structures no longer needed for processing tough raw material. The timing aligns with the earliest evidence of controlled fire use at Wonderwerk Cave in South Africa, documented by Francesco Berna at Simon Fraser University in a 2012 study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. The jaw shrank when the fire appeared. These two facts are not a coincidence. Now, here is the part that changes everything. The standard story of cooking goes something like this. Ancient humans discovered fire, learned to control it, and then figured out that food placed near it tasted better. Simple progression, logical sequence, almost certainly wrong. Let's go to Wonderwerk Cave in the northern Cape of South Africa, roughly 1 million years ago, because this is where the archaeological record forces a revision of the standard story in a direction nobody expected. Francesco Berna's 2012 analysis of ash and burned bone deposits at Wonderwerk established controlled fire use at least 1 million years ago, pushed back the earliest evidence by several 100,000 years from previous estimates. But the more significant finding was what the burned material revealed about the sophistication of fire use at that date. The ash patterns were not consistent with a single accidental fire or even occasional opportunistic use. They were consistent with a hearth, a maintained, controlled, repeatedly used fire in a specific location. 1 million years ago, before anatomically modern humans existed, before language as we understand it existed, before any of the cultural complexity we associate with human civilization existed, something was maintaining a fire in a specific spot and using it to process food. That is not a discovery of cooking. That is evidence that cooking was already routine. Think about that. The transition from raw food to cooked food was not a single moment of invention. It was a gradual shift that began so early in human prehistory that we cannot identify its starting point, only its consequences. By the time the archaeological record becomes clear enough to read, cooking was already established practice. We did not witness the invention. We are living in its aftermath. And that is not even the strange part. The strange part is what cooking did to something that has nothing to do with digestion. Here's where things get genuinely complicated and a little bit unsettling, honestly. Cooking food takes time. Raw food can be eaten immediately, wherever you find it, alone, on the move. Cooked food requires stopping. It requires fire. It requires waiting. It requires, in other words, a social context that raw food consumption does not. Richard Wrangham identified this dimension of cooking as potentially its most significant long-term consequence. Not the calories, not the brain size, but the social reorganization that a cooking fire enforces. When food must be cooked before it can be eaten, and cooking requires a fire, and a fire requires maintenance and protection, and the food being cooked is vulnerable to theft during the cooking process. You have just created the conditions for the emergence of pair bonding, food sharing, division of labor, and protected social groups. The campfire, on this reading, is not just a cooking technology. It is the original social institution. In 2014, Polly Weisner at the University of Utah published a study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences comparing daytime and nighttime conversations among the Juhonsi San people of Botswana, one of the few remaining populations whose social structure most closely resembles pre-agricultural hunter-gatherers. Her finding was stark. Daytime conversation was dominated by practical matters: food, resources, complaints, conflict. Nighttime conversation around the fire shifted dramatically. More than 80% of nighttime discussion consisted of storytelling, songs, and discussions of distant people and places. The fire changed what people talked about. It extended the social day past sunset. It created a protected space where stories could be told, knowledge could be transmitted, and cultural memory could be built and maintained across generations. Did you know? The human circadian rhythm contains a natural period of relaxed alertness in the hours after sunset, a window that does not exist in the sleep patterns of non-fire-using primates. Some researchers, including Jerome Siegel at UCLA, who published sleep studies on 3 traditional hunter-gatherer populations in 2015, have proposed that this evening alertness window is an evolutionary adaptation to firelight, a biological signature of the millions of years our ancestors spent sitting around fires after dark. Your body still expects a fire at night. It was built for one. Let's talk about something nobody puts in the textbooks. Cooking did not just process food. It processed information. The campfire, as a social institution, created the conditions for something that may be the most important human technology ever developed. More important than the wheel, more important than writing, more important than agriculture. It created the conditions for story. Around a fire at night, with predators kept at a distance and immediate survival pressures temporarily suspended, human groups did something no other animal does in any comparable form. They narrated. They described events that happened elsewhere to other people at other times. They imagined futures that had not yet occurred. They constructed explanations for phenomena they did not understand. They transmitted knowledge that could not be directly observed, where water sources were found during previous dry seasons, which plants were dangerous, what the behavior of certain animals meant. This is cumulative culture, each generation adding to what the previous generation built, rather than starting from zero. And cumulative culture requires a transmission mechanism, a way of passing complex, abstract information from one mind to another across time. The campfire was that mechanism, not metaphorically, literally. The firelit social space was where human cultural transmission happened night after night for hundreds of thousands of years, building a corpus of knowledge and story that eventually became everything we now call civilization. Cooking created the caloric surplus that built the brain. The brain created the capacity for language. The fire created the social context where language became cumulative knowledge. And cumulative knowledge built everything else. All of it traces back to one ancestor leaning toward a burning carcass and taking a bite. Ancient humans discovered fire transformed food into something their bodies could extract more from. They maintained those fires at significant personal cost, gathering fuel, protecting flames, organizing social groups around the hearth. They developed the social institutions of sharing, pair bonding, and storytelling around the same fire that cooked their meat. They transmitted everything they knew across generations in firelit circles after dark, building a cultural archive that no single brain could hold. Here is the uncomfortable truth. The modern relationship with cooked food has severed almost every non-nutritional function that cooking once served. We cook alone. We eat in front of screens rather than in circles. We consume food prepared by strangers in facilities we have never seen, without the fire, without the waiting, without the social context that cooking was built around for a million years. We kept the calories. We discarded the culture. But here's the twist. The campfire did not disappear. It migrated. The evening social gathering around a shared light source where stories are told and knowledge is transmitted. That is what you are doing right now. The screen replaced the fire. The content replaced the story. The algorithm replaced the elder with knowledge of the dry season water sources. The form is different. The function is identical. Humans still gather in the dark around a shared light and listen to someone narrate the world back to them. We have been doing it for a million years. We will not stop now. Right now, somewhere in the Kalahari, a Juhoansi elder is sitting beside a fire after dark, telling a story to a group of people who are listening with the same neural architecture that your ancestor used to hear the same kind of story a million years ago. The fire is the same size. The dark outside it is the same dark. The brain receiving the story is built from the same evolutionary pressures. The only thing that changed is the content, and even that, if you trace it far enough back, probably started as a story about food. If this completely changed how you think about every meal you have ever eaten, hit that like button right now and subscribe, because next time we are asking how ancient humans survived snake bites with no anti-venom, no hospitals, and no understanding of what venom actually is, and why some of what they did actually worked. The answer is darker and more precise than anything modern medicine would like to admit. See you in the next one.